The same world can look completely different depending on what you choose to notice. One person sees the obstacle. Another sees the opportunity beyond it. One person sees the long line. Another sees the free bagel waiting at the end. That difference in perspective can quietly shape an entire life. There's an old story about two lumberjacks who began work at exactly the same time every morning and finished at exactly the same time every evening. But there was one strange difference between them. Every day, one lumberjack would disappear for about an hour. The other man never stopped. Month after month, the same thing happened. The man who worked continuously should have been cutting more wood. Yet somehow the man who took an hour-long break always ended the day with the larger pile. Eventually, curiosity turned into frustration. Every morning we start together. Every evening we finish together. But you disappear for an hour every single day, and somehow you still cut more wood than I do. Where are you going? The other lumberjack simply smiled. I go home and sharpen my axe. That story contains a lesson most people learn far too late. Your goal is not to squeeze every possible ounce of effort out of every single day. The real question is what you can accomplish across an entire career, an entire life. And sometimes the most productive thing you can do is stop. Take a real vacation. Shut down the laptop. Ignore the emails. Put the phone away. Step completely away from the work. You are not falling behind. You are sharpening the axe. And if you want to discover what makes you come alive, and actually build a life around it, there are a few principles worth carrying with you. Start with this: pursue what you genuinely want. A friend and I once went running in Central Park. On weekends, the Road Runners organization often holds races, and afterwards sponsors hand out free food. On this particular day there were bagels. At the finish line, volunteers stood behind tables piled with boxes. Across from them, a long line of runners waited patiently. I looked at my friend. Let's get a bagel. He looked at the line. No way. That's too long. I looked at the bagels. Free bagels. He looked at the line again. I'm not standing there. And suddenly, I understood something about the way people move through life. I saw what I wanted. He saw what stood between him and what he wanted. That distinction is enormous. Some people spend their entire lives staring at the obstacle. They see the rejection, the competition, the risk, the years of effort, the possibility of failure. Other people notice the thing on the other side. So I walked over, reached between two people, and grabbed two bagels. Now, the point isn't that you should ignore every rule. The point is that you should stop assuming every obstacle requires you to follow the exact path everyone else is using. There may be another way. You are allowed to find your own route. You are allowed to challenge conventions. You are allowed to pursue the thing you want with creativity. The line is not always mandatory. But there is an important boundary. Your freedom to pursue what you want does not include taking away someone else's ability to pursue what they want. That brings us to something even more important. You cannot build a meaningful life entirely by yourself. Consider the United States Navy SEALs. They are among the most highly trained warriors in the world. A SEAL was once asked what kind of person survives the selection process and earns the right to become one. His answer was unexpected. He said he couldn't tell you exactly what kind of person makes it through, but he could tell you who doesn't. The men who arrive with massive muscles, covered in tattoos, desperate to prove how tough they are. They don't make it. The natural leaders who love giving orders but avoid carrying responsibility themselves. They don't make it. The gifted college athletes who have dominated every challenge they've faced, but have never truly been pushed to the edge of their identity. Many of them don't make it either. The people who succeed might be skinny. They might be terrified. They might be physically outmatched. But when they are exhausted beyond exhaustion, when their bodies are finished and their minds have nothing left to give, they somehow find one more reserve of strength. Not for themselves, for the person beside them. That is the difference. Elite performance is not ultimately about being the strongest, smartest, fastest, or most impressive person in the room. It is about what you do when the person next to you is struggling. Can you help them? Because the world is too complicated, too painful, and too demanding to navigate alone. If you discover your purpose, your passion, your spark, the next question is not simply, how do I achieve it? The better question is, who can help me get there? And just as importantly, who needs my help? Learn both skills. Learn how to reach out before you break. Learn how to accept help without feeling weak. And learn how to offer help before someone has to beg for it. The moment you finally admit, I'm stuck, I'm scared, I don't know what to do, you may discover that people around you were ready to help all along. They simply assumed you didn't need them, because you kept performing strength. But there's a catch. People are far more likely to show up for you when you have also learned how to show up for them. That leads to another lesson about leadership. Nelson Mandela is one of those rare leaders whose reputation crosses borders, cultures, and political disagreements. Around the world, he is widely recognized as an extraordinary leader. But his leadership education did not begin in a classroom. He was the son of a tribal chief, and as a child, he attended meetings with his father and the other elders. Two details stayed with him. The elders sat in a circle, and his father always spoke last. Most people are told to become better listeners, but there is a deeper skill learned to delay your opinion. Walk into a meeting and resist the urge to announce your answer first. Don't begin with, "Here's the problem, and here's what I think. Now let's hear from everyone else." Once you do that, you've already influenced the room. People begin responding to your position instead of exploring the problem for themselves. Instead, let everyone else speak first. Don't immediately nod when you agree. Don't shake your head when you disagree. Don't rush to correct people. Ask questions. Find out what they mean. Understand how they reached their conclusion. Try to understand not only the words coming out of their mouth, but the experience that produced those words. Then, after you've heard the room, you can speak. This is much harder than it sounds, especially when you already believe you know the answer. But the discipline of speaking last gives people something rare, the feeling that they were genuinely heard. And it gives you something equally valuable, information you would have missed if you had rushed to lead the conversation. Sometimes the smartest person in the room is the one who waits. And sometimes, the biggest obstacle in the room is the person who thinks they already have the answer. That brings us to one of the hardest lessons of all. Sometimes the problem is you. For centuries, women across Europe were dying shortly after giving birth. In some hospitals, the death rate was horrifyingly high. Doctors investigated the mystery. They studied the bodies of women who had died. They performed autopsies in the morning, then went directly into maternity wards to examine and deliver babies in the afternoon. But many of them never washed their hands. Eventually, Dr. Oliver Wendell Holmes pointed out the obvious possibility: perhaps the doctors themselves were carrying something from the autopsy rooms to the mothers. The reaction was not gratitude. He was dismissed. For decades, the idea was resisted. Then doctors began adopting handwashing and sterilization, and the deaths dramatically declined. The lesson is uncomfortable because it removes the easiest excuse. Sometimes you are not surrounded by the wrong people. Sometimes the environment is not the problem. Sometimes your habits, decisions, or behavior are contributing to the very outcome you keep complaining about. Accountability means accepting both sides of the equation. You don't get to claim all the credit when things go well and blame everyone else when they don't. If you want the credit for your successes, you also have to accept responsibility for your failures. That's the deal. And as your success grows, another danger appears: confusing the treatment you receive with your own worth. A former senior defense official once told a story about speaking at the same conference twice. The first time, he held a powerful position. He flew business class. Someone met him at the airport. His hotel room was already prepared. The next morning, a driver took him to the venue, where someone handed him coffee in a beautiful ceramic cup. A year later, he no longer held that position. This time, he flew coach. He took a taxi to the hotel and checked himself in. The next morning, he took another taxi to the conference, walked in through the front door, found his way backstage, and asked where he could get coffee. Someone pointed him toward the machine. He poured himself a cup into a Styrofoam cup, and he realized something: the ceramic cup had never been for him. It had been for the office he occupied. That is a lesson worth remembering as your influence, money, status, or title increases. People may open doors for you. They may bring you coffee. They may treat you with extraordinary respect. Enjoy those things if they come. Be grateful for them. But never confuse the privileges attached to your position with proof of your personal value. The ceramic cup belongs to the role. You are still the person who deserves the Styrofoam cup. That kind of humility protects you from a dangerous illusion: the belief that success makes you fundamentally more important than everyone else. And once you understand that, you begin to see another problem much more clearly. We often complain about people without examining the environment we created for them. We tell younger generations to be confident, disciplined, resilient, socially capable, and focused. Then we hand them devices designed to capture their attention every waking hour. We tell them to build meaningful relationships while creating cultures where everyone is constantly distracted. We tell them to be emotionally strong while treating vulnerability like weakness. And when they struggle, we ask, what's wrong with this generation? Maybe the better question is, what did we build around them? Whenever an entire group of people seems to be struggling, it's worth examining the common factor. If every one of your relationships keeps failing, eventually you have to ask what the common denominator is: you. The same principle applies to leadership. if your entire team is disengaged, if everyone seems difficult, if nobody is performing at their best, maybe the problem isn't that you somehow ended up with the only terrible group of employees on earth. Maybe your leadership is part of the equation. The goal should not be, how do I extract the maximum performance from these people? People are not machines. The better question is, what can I do to help these people become the best version of themselves? That is empathy. And empathy changes decisions. It changes how you communicate. It changes how you lead. It changes how you interpret behavior. Because the person who appears lazy may be overwhelmed. The person who seems disengaged may feel invisible. The person who appears arrogant may actually be afraid. And the person who constantly says, "I'm fine," may be barely holding everything together. We live in an age where people have become experts at appearing okay. Social media gives everyone a stage and a filter. People can broadcast success while privately feeling lonely. They can look confident while feeling completely lost. They can collect hundreds of connections and still have nobody they trust when life becomes difficult. And this is where technology creates a particularly serious problem. Every notification, message, like, and new interaction can produce a small reward in the brain. That reward is one reason people keep checking their phones even when they already know there is nothing new. We don't just use the device. We begin to anticipate the next hit of stimulation. The phone becomes the thing we reach for when we're bored, then when we're anxious, then when we're lonely, then when we're stressed. And eventually, the habit becomes automatic. The danger is not simply that people spend too much time online. The deeper danger is that they may never fully develop the skills that real relationships require. Many young people will tell you that they have friends they enjoy spending time with, but would not necessarily rely on in a crisis. They know those friendships can disappear the moment something more interesting comes along. And when serious stress arrives, instead of turning toward another human being, they turn toward the screen. The device provides immediate relief, but temporary relief is not the same thing as genuine support. You don't build deep relationships by avoiding discomfort. You build them by practicing trust, honesty, presence, and the willingness to stay when things become difficult. And that matters because work is another place where people desperately need those same things. I believe enjoying your work should not be treated like winning the lottery. When someone says, "I love my job," people often respond as if they have discovered some rare miracle. That's amazing. You're so lucky. But why should that be unusual? Why should the majority of people expect to spend the best hours of their lives in places they dread? People deserve workplaces where they feel safe enough to admit uncertainty. Safe enough to ask questions. Safe enough to say, "I made a mistake." Safe enough to receive feedback without immediately becoming defensive. And safe enough to believe that the people leading them care about more than a quarterly number. Because when people know they matter, something changes. They stop seeing the organization as a place that takes from them. They begin to feel personally connected to what they are building. They will work harder. They will sacrifice more. They will stay through difficult moments, not because someone forced them to, because they care. That is the difference between extracting effort and inspiring commitment. And it brings everything back to the beginning. You can work endlessly without becoming better. You can stand in front of the same obstacle for years without ever asking whether there is another path. You can insist on doing everything alone while people around you are waiting to help. You can speak so quickly that you never hear what anyone else is trying to tell you. You can blame the world while refusing to examine your own role in the problem. You can accept the ceramic cup and forget that the privilege belongs to the position, not to you. Or you can choose a different way to live. Sharpen the axe. Pursue what you want. Help the person beside you. Ask for help when you need it. Listen long enough to understand. Take responsibility when you are part of the problem. Stay humble when success arrives. And build environments where people can become more fully themselves. Because working hard for something you don't care about is exhausting. But working hard for something you love, that's not stress, that's passion.